Liberation greetings to all and sundry, my people of Southern Cameroons, my people of Ambazonia. Accept liberation greetings, freedom greetings from me, Comrade John Akuro, this 31st day of December in the year 2024 or 23. You see, I'm already in a haste to get into 2024 until I'm already carrying myself 1 year ahead. But anyhow, it's just a few hours. We're just a few hours away from 2024. On ground zero right now, I know we are less than 5 hours away from 2024. In some parts of the world, they are already in 2024. So those of you who are already in 2024, accept happy New Year greetings from me. I wish you all a happy and a prosperous New Year 2024, full of health, full of exploits, and of course, full of achievements. It's the same wish I'll be extending to all our people. I mean, ahead of time in ground zero, you are on ground one, ground two, ground three. You are in the dungeons of La Republique Cameroun, this specifically to our prisoners of war and to our internally displaced persons. Accept hearty greetings, my expressions for a happy and prosperous new year 2024. Despite our challenges, we will be able to overcome. So, my people of Ambazonia, I'm here on this last day of the year so that we should close with this very important subject matter that I started discussing, being this attempt by Maurice Kamto, La République du Cameroun's apparatchiks in our midst in the Southern Cameroons, and some misguided elites and citizens of La République du Cameroun to rewrite our history to suit their whims and caprices, and especially to use that in maintaining us in slavery and servitude under them for life. So today we'll be looking at an international perspective to what Mr. Kamto or Professor Kamto was saying that I took time to analyze in our last two conversations. And so I'm going to call on you today once more to share the link to this communication as you join. Share the link as much as possible. Let's get as many people as possible to share in this education, this exchange. And often I make clear this is my contribution. I'm not pretending to be all knowing. I'm not pretending to be, the most knowledgeable about these issues. But this is my contribution to the education campaign that we naturally should lead to ensure that we get our people to understand the nitty-gritties of how we find ourselves here and why we are fighting in the first place. There will be times that I'll come short, and I expect you in your comments, in your reactions, sometimes in calls, sometimes in direct messages to me to, help bring more light, because this is very important for all of us. There are some people who are just now getting more determined, getting onto this fight because it's getting clearer to them exactly why we have been fighting for 7 years and counting. Don't be surprised about this. It happens. And so, therefore, that is why continuous education is necessary, continuous education is important, and continuous sensitization. So, as much as you can share, like I will say this, sometimes it gets hurting to see that we are selfish in our thoughts. We just say, why should I be sharing? Why should I be doing your bidding for you? You're not doing my bidding for me. This is for Ambazonia. This is for the Southern Cameroons. This is for generations upon generations of Southern Cameroonians to come. This is our fight for posterity, our fight to restore the soul of our nation, our fight to take back what belongs to us, our quest to ensure that we restore justice, peace, and a thriving Southern Cameroons by the time we also bow out. So therefore, don't hesitate to share. We are several thousand of us here, about 26,000 of us on this platform, and I should expect that with important subject matters like this one, we should be seeing tens, 15, 20,000 people actually being able to watch. So therefore, There are quite some who have lost their notifications and they will require that by sharing, we are able to reach out to them. Please continue to do just that. And I want to take this opportunity before I delve into the full subject matter of our conversation today to express sincere thanks to those amongst you, the viewers of this platform, would have taken upon yourself to reach out to me to say, Mr. Akuro, how can I support your platform? I want to throw my support for your platform because I'm very excited about what you are doing. I'm happy with the contribution that you are making to ensuring that we get a greater understanding of why we are fighting and of why we must fight all the way to the end, and of course, of continuing to mobilize people. And some said, how can I give you something to help maintain this platform? I was like, oh, I'm excited. I'm thankful. Recognition is something that we usually do not ignore. So I say, I'm very thankful. And so when you ask, I say, go ahead. You want to access this platform, go to amberrelief 2018 at gmail.com. You can make your contribution there. That is Zelle, exclusively Zelle. You can also use PayPal if you want to support this particular platform. And I want to say, it's costly to maintain the studio, to pay monthly for the software, to pay for everything. But trust me, I do this as my contribution, as giving back to Mother Ambazonia, to Mother Southern Cameroons. Look, folks, I'm so proud to be an Ambazonian, so proud to be a Southern Cameroonian, and I will do everything in my power to ensure that we are able to send La Republique du Cameroun out of our territory, restore the soul of our land, and make Ambazonia that land of milk and honey that is sung in our anthem. So, my people, don't hesitate. I'm delighted to receive this assistance, but I'd like you to send it to 2000 to amberrelief 2018 at gmail.com, because while it is in there, it's going to definitely be used by the struggle to help to reach out to our refugees who also need to enjoy New Year like us, to reach out to our prisoners of war, to reach out to our internally displaced persons, in fact, to reach out to those who so seriously need this assistance at this time. So, folks, don't hesitate. And very well, thank you so much in advance. For those who have already done something, I'm really excited. Please, I'm not constraining you to contribute. I'm just saying, those who have called, there's some who have reached out that I'm not able to get to. That's why I'm sharing this, so that if you have that mind to do it, you don't need to reach out to me. You don't need to call me again. You just go ahead and do this. When you do that, put a message of appreciation for the JMA connection. You go to the struggle, and our people will know that we are also doing our level best to get us to where we need to go to. Okay, that said, let's get into our subject matter for discussion today. Before I come here, I want to take us on a light journey to Limbe, to Victoria, in Ambazonia. You will get me do this once in a while. I really have not been in the toppest of forms. In the past few days, I've really been a bit down with health, but duty calls, I really have to continue to do this to make sure that we finish up with this before we get into the new year. And so I'm suffering from a cold. It was a real difficult night. That's why rather than be here at exactly 6 p.m. Amber time as I promised, you notice that we are here at 6:45, that we started at 6:45 p.m. Amber time. So just bear with me. I really had to, to overcome this health challenge to be here in the studio so that we carry out this conversation. So that said, my people, let's travel over to Victoria. Chantier Naval is one of the companies that Chantier Naval is a French name. The English name is actually the Cameroun Shipyard. It's in French called Chantier Naval Cameroun. That is one of the companies that Mr. Paul Biya, president of La République du Cameroun, had in end of year speeches, at least 4 to 5 consecutive speeches, praised the management of that company, when Mr. Zacchaeus Fondinam, the Southern Cameroonian, was at the helm, was managing it. And Mr. Paul Biya praised it for good reason. Because when Mr. Zacchaeus Fondinam took over Chantier Naval, that company had a running capital of 45 million CFA francs. Please listen well. 45 million. 45 million CFA francs. So a big company like that one, a shipyard company that has to do with maintenance of ships and other maritime vessels. And so, a few years after Zacchaeus Fondinam took over that company, and his appointment by Simon Achidi Achu, who was then Prime Minister, faced a serious backlash by the Beti Bulu Ekang clan. They felt so angry that a major company like that one was being handed over to a slave, to a Southern Cameroonian, although the running capital was just 45 million. So it was dying, and Ba Achidi Achu of blessed memory wanted to rescue that company and decided therefore to pick a pair of hands that he was convinced had what it would take to bring Chantier Naval out of the doldrums to something. And so a few years after only, the running capital of Chantier Naval, the shipyard, went from 45 million to over 5 billion. Again, before they knew it, the running capital was already tens of billions. And by the time Zacchaeus Fondinam was kicked out of the place and thrown in jail after the Bulu Ekang Beti clan succeeded in their coup to oust him from there, the running capital was 45 billion CFA francs. And they accused Zacchaeus Fondinam of embezzling 230 million, for which he is at the Douala New Bell prison serving a life jail time. Now look at what Chantier Naval has become. This is in Limbe. And I'm going to Limbe because there's even something more I'm about to say.
Voici qu'on a déshabillé. Déshabillé. Un irresponsable, une mère d'enfant, déshabillé comme vous voyez là. Je suis nu. Tout, je n'ai même plus toutes mes chaussures sont découpées, déshabillées. C'est ça le Cameroun.
Parce que tu réclames ton
salaire. Je réclame 6 mois de salaire, je réclame mon salaire. On vient me déshabiller. Je sors de chez moi le matin, je vais me retrouver nu. Parce que je réclame mon salaire. Parce qu'il y a un super DG au chantier naval. C'est ça le Cameroun.
So can you imagine? This is Chantier Naval Limbe branch. So the workers are talking here. This is at the Christmas Eve. The workers are talking of claiming 6 months of unpaid salaries. 6 months of unpaid salaries. Folks, I like to say it here. When Zacchaeus Fondinam was Director General of Chantier Naval, he hired thousands of young people. And getting a job at Chantier Naval was, it was something else. Because the pay was very high. The pay was very high. While some could boast on CRTV and others who have a salary of 400, 500,000, at Chantier Naval that could be considered change. So at entry level, people at Chantier Naval will get 200, 300, 400,000, and those who are earning midway, the people who are earning millions as salaries per month at Chantier Naval. But this is just a few years down the road. These are workers of Chantier Naval being water cannoned. That's why using water cannons to wash them at the eve of New Year celebrations because they are claiming 6 months of salary. Watch again.
Allez, ça va aller.
Arrosez-nous, il n'y a pas de problème.
Allez, ça va aller.
Arrosez-nous, il n'y a pas de problème.
I don't want to spend a lot of time playing all of those clips. I'll just play brief to tell you what I want to say as message there. Look at it. And my apologies that the images seem upside down. This is Chantier Naval in Limbe. These are workers coming to meet management to protest 6 months of unpaid wages. Who do they meet at the scene? The Director General calls the police Not just any kind of police, riot police that will come, water the people, beat them up, torture them, and even arrest some. Here in the United States of America, we saw workers of the auto sector, protesting that they were not protesting unpaid wages. They were protesting they wanted increments in their wages. They wanted an increment. And what did we see from the administration? President Joe Biden, the most powerful man in the world, flew to where these protests were taking place, to Michigan, and stood by the protesters, sided with the protesters, and urged the company executives, the company management, to listen to their plight. Oh my goodness. Nothing could be more Anglo-Saxon. That is the spirit that I know from reading what obtained in the Southern Cameroons of old, in the golden age of the Southern Cameroons, from 1954 right up to 1961, we were not yet with this people with this kind of ugly attitudes, and right up to 1966, where we still managed at least to keep pace with good behaviors, with knowing how to treat people humanely, with knowing how to listen to people when they have issues, when they have complaints. This is in Victoria. Now listen, I know you are beginning to ask yourself the question I have on my mind.
Me voici donc, on a mouillé. On a mouillé, les policiers sont venus, ils m'ont mouillé. Comme vous voyez là, du pied jusqu'à la tête. Jusqu'à couper mes chaussures, me renverser. C'est ça l'état du Cameroun. Voilà ça. Mouillé du pied jusqu'à la tête.
That is it. You ask for your right, what you get in return? Torture. And look at something. At the end of the day, if any of these people died, they will say that what? That these people started it. Oh yes. They will not say that their police came in with brutality, tortured people, broke their legs, shattered their necks. No. They will say the victims are the people who look for the trouble, and that the victims started in, and the victims should apologize to the people who attacked them. This is it. Now you see, I know, let's come to the question that you have been asking yourself, that I've also been asking myself. We are here in Victoria, Chantier Naval in Limbe. What language are you hearing the people talking there? What language are you hearing there? So when I received these videos, I was like, I asked the person, the informant who sent me these videos. I said, wait a minute, I hope you're not making an error. I know this is Chantier Naval that we're talking about. Yes, that's the National Shipyard Corporation that was headed by Zacchaeus Fondindam and who was thrown in jail. And of course, the Bulo Ekambiti clan came in, wiped all the money that they made there, and the thing is an empty shell now. It's completely finished. It's only out of shame that they can't go back to either Fondindam or look for another Southern Cameroonian to come fix it for them. But this is Victoria. So why am I hearing but French? For all I've not heard a single worker there speaking English. That's why you hear even the police are coming there, they are speaking French. Well, everybody is speaking French. So I asked, but can I know what's going on? And that's when I was told that after Mr. Zacchaeus Fondindam was kicked out and the Bulu Ekambeti clan took over, that's when the Limbe branch was just coming into being. 98% of the workers, Chantier Naval Limbe, are Francophone citizens, are citizens from La Republique du Cameroun. 98%. Did you hear that? Not different from Sonara. So when I hear some misguided idiot, let me use that word today, called Bella Mokichas or Ngaringa Ringa, come and say someone's knee is on the neck of the Southwest. I wonder if he has eyes enough to see, he has ears enough to hear what is going on around him. Because this is an aberration. I mean, this is an aberration. %. Well, folks, I just came there because I wanted us to, have a little feel of what is going on. But it is a shame. This is the end of year, end of 2023. I wonder by the time we get into 2024, we should be bearing these things in our heads. That's why sometimes you hear people say, oh, they're not respecting Ghost Town, they're not respecting this in Victoria. This is because La Republique du Cameroun's citizens have conquered Victoria over 70% today. All the big companies that are in Victoria, in most of them, at least 80% of those who are in charge of business are from La Republique du Cameroun, with the exception of the CDC, where because of excessive, pressure and all of those things, at least there is some degree of mitigation at that level. But Sonara, Chantier Naval, don't talk. Every other thing around there, that is what it is. Okay, folks, let's get now to our key subject matter of the day. You see, Professor Maurice Kamto of the MRC and La République du Cameroun are getting too worried increasingly because when they see posts like these ones that come from the late Foncha, when they see us repeat this over and over and over, they get really, really frustrated. They get disturbed, and they get disturbed for good reason. Why would they be disturbed for good reason? Because, candidly, it makes us understand that the gibberish he is saying, that our people cooperated in getting us to where we are today, cannot fly. Because, come to look at it, this is Foncha saying the Anglophone Cameroonians, I don't bother about the language, whom I brought into union, have been ridiculed and referred to as les Biafrins, les ennemis dans la maison, les traîtres, etc. And the constitutional provision which protected this Anglophone minority have been suppressed, their voice drowned, while the rule of the gun has replaced dialogue, which Anglophones cherish very much. This should come as a clear indication to anyone that, as I pointed out, when Ahidjo started doing what he was doing to our people, they had no choice. Because Ahidjo had the guns, Ahidjo had the forces all over the place. He could suppress, he could divide and rule, and he also had the power to promote a few long-throated ones who felt that in the midst of the sufferings of the people, they could find their treasure. That's exactly what happened. So today, therefore, we're looking at an international response to Maurice Kamto. And before I get to that, I have this reaction from Professor Carlson Anyangwe, our own venerated Professor Carlson Anyangwe. He sent me this text in reaction and actually did recommend that I share it. And of course, when I get texts or reactions that really contribute to the narrative, I must go ahead to share it. So he says, Kamto is such a congenial liar as to merit the title of a historical fraud. I will pick just a few of his lies that border on complete ignorance. And he says, lie number 1, this is from Professor Carlson Anyangwe. He says, Kamto claims that in July 1884, there was born a state called Cameroun with K. He says the world knows of no state called Cameroun that emerged in July 1884. So this must be a mere figment of Kamto's imagination. He says what the Germans proclaimed as a protectorate of Cameroun in July 1884 was only the Douala mudflat. The Douala mudflat area, which Douala chiefs exercised authority over. Of course, we know from reading history that Zingraf had to start fighting. Zingraf, the German explorer, had to start fighting, leading battles, using one tribe against the other to expand inward in the hinterlands in order to get more and more land to the Cameroun or German protectorate, which means that effectively there was no such thing that existed in July 1884. And so Professor Anyangwe says the Bami and Beti and all these territories were not comprised within this Cameroon protectorate as initially acquired by Germany. Over the ensuing decades, by a process of colonial conquest, Germany enlarged the area of its protectorate by acquiring territories in the hinterlands. We know how the Germans fought the Balenyunga people, how the Germans fought the Bafut people, how at some point the Germans, therefore, when Zingra succeeded in conquering the Bali people, they now use the Bali people as allies to fight other ethnic groups to bring them within that protectorate. And you know, the influence of the Balis, of Balinyunga in this until today can be seen in the naming of some cities, even in La Republique du Cameroun. Like you see, the people of Bangangte in the west region of La Republique du Cameroun, that place normally should actually be called Ngangte. As the people will tell you, it is Ngangte. But Ba was what was added by the Balis to mean the people of Ngangte. Is the same thing that happened across the board in several other areas. And so this tells you, therefore, of that history of that conquest to indicate that the July 1884 construct that Professor Maurice Kamto talks about simply does not exist. And then it says number 2. This is from Professor Carlson Anyam, where he said, there was never any Anglo-French condemonium in Cameroon from 1916 to 1922. He says Kamto's claim that there was is pure fiction coming from his fertile imagination. There was an Anglo-French condemonium, yes, but this was only over Douala, an Anglo-French condemonium, but only over Douala. And the condemonium lasted from 1914 to March 1916, when, following the defeat of the last German stronghold in Mora is in the far north, Cameroon was partitioned between Britain and France along the Simon Milner line. This Cameroon with K. And so, this partition was confirmed by agreement of the two countries, that's France and Britain, in 1919 at the Versailles Peace Treaties. It was confirmed by the League of Nations in 1922 and by the Anglo-French Declaration of 1931 and by the United Nations in 1945 when the United Nations came into being. That is why the two territories, French-speaking Cameroon, that is La République du Cameroun, and the Southern Cameroons, were all protectorates, were all trust territories. First, under the League of Nations, and then under the United Nations. And the third point from Professor Anyangwe says, there was no such thing as test plebiscites in the Southern Cameroons, or even the British Northern Cameroons. Kamto is again telling a fat lie, and of course I already debunked this here. The plebiscite in the Northern Cameroons in 1959 was for the people to decide whether to become part of Nigeria or to postpone a decision on their future. The people decided to postpone a decision on their future, and on the 12th of February 1961, they decided to join Nigeria. So while there was something in 1959 in British Northern Cameroons, which had to, for the people to determine whether they wanted to immediately join Nigeria or they wanted to postpone their decision, there never existed any such things in the Southern Cameroons, in the British Southern Cameroons. I guess this is clear. And then point number four from Professor Carlson Anyangwe, he says Kamto is guilty of selective reading. He reads the plebiscite questions but refuses to read the vote that took place at the UN General Assembly on 21 April 1961, and also refuses to read Resolution 1608. Of course, I've talked elaborately about April 21, 1961, and that's what Professor Carlson Anyangwe is coming back to. This date is very important, and I'd like us to note it, and we should begin to mark this date always, because it is on this date that the United Nations General Assembly held a vote, and there were 3 votes on that day, as Professor Emmanuel Tata Mentang also says in his own reaction. I'll come to Professor Emmanuel Tata Mentang's own reaction towards the end of this broadcast. And so Professor Carlson Anyangwe goes on. The plebiscite question asked whether the people of the Southern Cameroons wish to achieve independence by joining either of its 2 neighbors. The meaning that was put on the term joining was federating. It was so clearly understood by Britain, the United Nations, that the Southern Cameroons and even French Cameroon. So the question actually reads, do you wish to achieve independence by federating with French Cameroon? Furthermore, Resolution 1608 talks of termination of trusteeship in accordance with Article 76b of the Charter of the UN upon the Southern Cameroons joining French Cameroon. The word upon means on, at, immediately before or after or contemporaneously. I'm still reading from Professor Carlson Anyangwe. So I say the idea of achieving independence through the independence of another country is silly. Because that's what Campbell tries to say. That we were asked to decide whether we want to achieve independence through the independence of La Republique du Cameroun or through the independence of Nigeria. If that were the case, there would never have been a vote at the United Nations General Assembly for the independence of the Southern Cameroons. And again, as I said, that vote was meant to enable the Southern Cameroons achieve its independence, negotiate a treaty of union with La République du Cameroun, and then join with La République du Cameroun in a federation. And because no treaty of union was ever signed, La République du Cameroun's presence in the Southern Cameroons is not only illegal, it is annexationist, and they must be kicked out. That is what this is. Camto is unable to explain to his audience why on 1 October 1961, that's on October 1, 1961, La République du Cameroun ceased to be a sovereign independent state and took on the much degraded status of a federated state within an overarching federal republic, a new sovereign state that emerged on that date. And this is again very fundamental, because people forget to say this sometimes. History is history. On the 1st of October 1961, that country that achieved independence on the 1st of January 1961, known as La République du Cameroun, ceased to exist. It ceased to exist. That country that achieved independence following a vote at the United Nations General Assembly on April 21, 1961, known as the Southern Cameroons, ceased to exist. A new country came into being on the 1st of October 1961, known as the Federal Republic of Cameroon. This Federal Republic of Cameroon now constituted 2 states, known as East Cameroon, which means La République du Cameroun. It was the entire La République du Cameroun, not fractions. The entire former La République du Cameroun became known as the state of East Cameroon. The entire Southern Cameroons, at that time there was no such thing as Northwest, Southwest. The entire Southern Cameroons became known as West Cameroon. And each of these 2 had a prime minister, at the helm of which was a federal president. That is what it was on the 1st of October 1961. So if the Southern Cameroons was mainly disappearing to La République du Cameroun, why would La République du Cameroun have downgraded, as Professor Carlson Anyangwe says, downgraded from being a sovereign state to becoming a state within a federated state? This is a fundamental question. And this is why questions are asked today. How did La République du Cameroun, that disappeared on the 1st of October 1961, re-emerge in January 19, or is that January, February 1984? While the Southern Cameroons that existed prior to 1st October 1961 simply disappeared from existence. What happened? This is the question to which Kanto will not want to answer, will not even want evoked. And that's why Professor Carlson Anyangwe says, since Federation was a parity political association, the Federation was constituted by two territories. The territory of the Southern Cameroons, which became the federated state of West Cameroon, and the territory of La République du Cameroun, which became the federated state of East Cameroon. So that was a reaction from Professor Carlson Anyangwe that I read here. And as I said, there's another reaction from Professor Emmanuel Tatamentan. This should tell you that this platform is followed by the Southern Cameroons intelligentsia, and I mean, usually there are a lot of contributions that come in to make us continue to educate ourselves so that we know better exactly what happened in our land. So before I come to Professor Emmanuel Tatamentan's own reaction, and you know Professor Emmanuel Tatamentan is a political scientist, just like Professor Carlson Anyangwe is an erudite and well-known professor at law internationally, same like the erudite Professor Emmanuel Tatamentan. These are heavyweights when it comes to matters of understanding these issues of international concern. So now let's move on to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We have all watched this video, but let's take a completely different look at this video.
It's terrible and so sad that these wounds have resurfaced. But I fear it was always going to be thus, with the exclusion of the English-speaking minority in the affairs of state. The only practical solution, from distance, is a political settlement with either a United Nations or African Union peacekeeping contingent being placed on the ground to enable an immediate cessation of violence, ensuring a humanitarian protective intervention, and a cooling off period to create the conditions to allow an equitable settlement to be hammered out. Building on lessons learnt, autonomy but not separation in a close-knit federation is the formula for lasting peace.
Now you see the call here. This is from the British House of Lords. The call here is actually for, a ceasefire and making proposals and all of those. But the crux of the matter, what interests me in this particular discourse, is right ahead. So when I don't interrupt, I know you've watched this. When I get to where it matters, I will stop for us to talk. Although what he says here at this point, that, not separation, but some kind of, federation with serious autonomy and all of this. These are proposals he makes. But he is getting back to the facts, and it is what interests me. What interests me here are the facts. And folks, mind you, the simple fact that this issue is coming up in the British House of Parliament, and that you have British representatives taking time to articulate this particular subject matter, should tell you that despite the avalanche of reports by those who hate our liberation movement, claiming we have lost grounds, we have not made any ground, nobody's interested in us, we are indeed covering a lot of grounds, and we will get exactly to where we aim to get to. Trust me on this. Let's follow.
And should be embraced as a solution. I have not tracked the papers that explained why this was not contained in the 1961 plebiscite when divesting from Southern Cameroon. The Minister could usefully shed light into the thinking of the day and as to why not. Is the government satisfied that sufficient regard was paid to sensitivities, responsibilities and their consequences by our forebears? The Minister may wish to comment on the background of the 6th of November 2018 ruling in favour of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office regarding the legality of the original plebiscite.
So did you hear that? What is interesting me here is this question about the legality of the original plebiscite. And you see, before he gets here, this representative asked the question as to whether the British government today is satisfied with what they see, be a consequence of the policy that they took in 1961. Are they satisfied with what they are seeing? And then he now leaves from there, veers into the history itself, and asks this fundamental question that has been asked in several circles before. Was that plebiscite of 1961 legal in the first place? And you know why he asked this question? It's simple. Because like I said in my previous broadcasts, the British government had a mandate from first the League of Nations and then the United Nations to prepare the people of the British Cameroons, that's both British Northern and British Southern Cameroons, because it was British Cameroons, they are the ones that broke it into Northern and Southern, British Cameroons, to prepare us for independence. France fulfilled its mandate by effectively taking La Republique du Cameroun to independence. We were not the only trust territories. There were several other trust territories. And each trusteeship power ensured that they fulfilled the mandate. But at the time the British had to fulfill the mandate over the Southern Cameroons, frustration at the fact that our people will not accept to be swallowed into Nigeria for the British convenience caused the British to put us before this kind of unacceptable situation. That is why this deputy is asking here a question that was asked in a challenge to this referendum or to this plebiscite in 2018 in the courts as to was this plebiscite legal in the first place. And of course, international scholars have made clear that this plebiscite was not only uncalled for, but it was in violation of international law. This is where we are, and this is the consequence that we are facing today. Massacre, genocide. Let's follow it. My bad.
November the 6th this year, my lords. I do wonder if the right question was before the court. I will refer to the Cairo Declaration and the subsequent Constitutive Act of the...
You hear another thing he says. I wonder whether the right question was before the people, whether the right question was asked, granted even, that plebiscite was legal. Were the right questions asked? You can hear Camto Rivera say, oh, that's why you get this misinterpretation from the Camtos, that we were to achieve independence simply by joining La Republique du Cameroun through La Republique du Cameroun's independence. That's what it means. That is by fusing with La Republique du Cameroun that we will benefit from the independence of La Republique du Cameroun. That is what Camto insinuates. That's exactly what Professor Carlson Anyangwe dispels. And that is why this British representative of the people, is asking that same question. Was the right question asked? That is assuming that the plebiscite were legal.
The African Union. What was always and still is envisaged as an acceptable solution to the English language speaking people of Cameroon was a choice of a federation made up of two states with equal status. My lords, I'm not critical of London in isolation. The Quai d'Orsay possibly pressed what it considered to be an advantage by not containing this key option in restricting the alternatives to a choice between Nigeria or French Cameroon.
So you see, he bursts the bubble. He says he's actually taking the British government to task. But not in isolation. He mentions the Quai d'Orsay. You don't understand, the Quai d'Orsay is a French ministry, is where the French Ministry of External Affairs is lodged. That is the structure in charge of the French diplomacy. So it says that, of course, the Quai d'Orsay, the French, definitely weighed in tremendously, pushed for it because of the perceived advantage they were going to get from it, getting extra territory. That is the territory of the Southern Cameroons, and of course, extra resources. And that's why you see the French hell-bent today, supporting Paul Biya's ongoing genocidal campaigns in the Southern Cameroons, caring less as to whether people are slaughtered or not, because it is their interest that matters. And take a look at what I presented here before, not long ago, about a document by the Beti Bulu clan. They say the number of deaths regarding their campaign to maintain themselves in the Southern Cameroons does not matter. And they gave a reason, because France is assured to constantly protect them. France will use its veto at the United Nations. France will use its powers everywhere to protect its interests through La République du Cameroun in the Southern Cameroons. That is the reason the French will do everything possible to make sure this issue is not discussed as a standalone at the UN Security Council, unless we, the people of the Southern Cameroons, constrain La République du Cameroun to that corner. When La République du Cameroun begins to tell France, we can't bear our presence in that land anymore. It's unbearable. And the only way to do it is for us to stop this buffoonery of many governments, to stop this buffoonery of group identity, to stop this buffoonery of fighting for leadership at a time when we need to be coming together as one people to overcome this mighty challenge before us. We need to come together as one people because we need to fundraise together, because we need to get that money that is required to make the cost of occupation unbearable for La République du Cameroun in the Southern Cameroons. Usually when I evoke this, what follows are stones. And trust me, folks, I have received those stones until I'm immune to them. Those stones don't mean a thing to me anymore, as long as I know that I'm telling our people constantly the naked truth. If we don't come together, fundraise together in one place to get the consistent amounts that we need to help prosecute this liberation movement, no one will do it for us. We cannot sit and continue imagining that there's some imaginary power somewhere that will emerge as a Father Christmas to come and help kick La République du Cameroun out of our territory for us. We have to do it. Today is December 31, 2023. We are at the dawn of 2024, and I must say this year, even at the cost of your stones falling on my head, because we can't continue doing the same thing and expecting different results. No, we can't. We must recognize as a people that if others needed just some force, we need extra force, because we are up against two members of the UN, two permanent members of the UN Security Council who ganged up against our interests and who have not, until this moment, started thinking that they may have to act and think differently. No, they haven't. The British are still hell-bent on respecting their engagement, ceding us to France like they were selling slaves in the 16th and 17th century. This is what it is. And if we don't recognize this, then something must definitely be wrong with us. Let's continue, folks.
And importantly, the 1964 Cairo Declaration on African Borders, reaffirmed in Article 4B of the Constitutive Act of the African Union, however, and signed off by the President of Cameroon, makes clear that demarcation of the territory of each African state is recognized as being such on the date of its independence.
Now, did you get this? This is exactly what Kamto will never want you to know. This is what Kamto will never want you to mention. This gentleman, this honorable gentleman, is reiterating here that in 1964, The Organization of African Unity, the OAU, that has been succeeded by the AU, the African Union, came up with statutes. And according to those statutes, it was that the boundaries, the demarcation of each country is recognized as such at independence. What does it say? That the boundaries of each country are frozen at independence. And that's why he's reiterating here that the president of La République du Cameroun, Amadou Ahidjo, signed up. And his question here is, has there been a change? Was this repealed? Because that means, therefore, that because La République du Cameroun achieved independence in 1960 and on January 1, without the Southern Cameroons, the boundaries of La République du Cameroun are those that existed as at January 1, 1960. Anything out of this is territorial expansion, which is against international law. And that's why I said here before that for La République du Cameroun to lay any claims on any parcel of Southern Cameroon's territory, there needs to be a treaty of union that will give La République du Cameroun legal access to the territory of the Southern Cameroons. Anything short of that, La République du Cameroon's presence on our land is illegal, is colonial, is annexationist. This is what it is. And I said here before that this is why La République du Cameroun and France, for that matter, will not accept just like that to find themselves on an international negotiations table for this matter to be settled. Because they know they have no legal argument. They know this thing will end on day one. Because simply put, they'll ask them, what do you have to lay claims on that territory? And they have nothing. This is what it is. This is why all we need to do is constrain La République du Cameroun, drag La République du Cameroun to the negotiations table. They can only be dragged. La République du Cameroun never willingly come to the negotiations table. This is a fundamental truth that John Wooten knows before sitting in Bamenda to be parroting the trash that he parroted. This is a sacrosanct truth that the entire Southern Cameroon's intellectual class that are within the CPD and mafia know. Sit on it and go out there to deceive our people that we never had independence or we have always been part of La République du Cameroun. But this is an elected representative of the British people in a very level-headed manner making this case in the British Parliament. Let's follow again.
Does the United Kingdom government accept this to be the case? Or not? Has there been subsequent declarations that nullify these issues on borders?
You see, he asked a fundamental question. Have there been any subsequent declarations nullifying this 1964 determination by the Organization of African Unity that boundaries are frozen at independence? This takes us to what is known as the principle of uti possidetis iuris. This meant that because the African countries know, or the African communities knew, that there were wars of conquest in Europe that affected the creation of boundaries at one point or the other. If this principle did not come into being, people like Maurice Kamto will get up and tell you that we need to reconquer Central African Republic because it was part of German Cameroon, so it was our territory. They are forbidden by this 1964 clause. Maurice Kamto and his folk will get up one day and tell you that Northern Gabon belongs to the Republique du Cameroun. That 1964 clause, signed to by Amadou Ahidjo, forbids them. He cannot go to claim territory in the Shari, in Chad. No, he go to claim territory in Congo. So what makes him think that he should come claim territory in Southern Cameroons? This is a fundamental issue that we need to continue to raise by day and by night, so that a lot of our people who are still being deceived here and there, say Ambazonia is evil, Ambazonia is terrorist, Ambazonia is this and that. So you know exactly why we are fighting. Because I'm convinced that when you know exactly why we are fighting, it will make you become more prone to fight with us all the way to the end. Because you hear this British deputy asking the fundamental question: was the 1964 determination freezing boundaries of all member states of the OAU as acquired or as achieved at independence, has it been repealed to make room for La Republique du Cameroun to lay claims on the territory of the Southern Cameroons? So the determination was that because you have this land, because this is what you have at this time, and you are getting independence, own it. So that there will be no fighting to say, I'm taking this one back, it was taken from me. I'm taking that one back, it was taken from me. Say, no. That was the uti possibilities juris. Because you have it, own it. And the boundaries were thus frozen.
If not, it would follow that French Cameroun and Ambazonia are both able to assert territorial integrity. At no time before or after its independence from France was the Southern Cameroons part of that country known by its French name and style as La Republique.
Did you hear that? He says, and he makes clear that if this 1964 clause of the OAU had never been repealed, then it emerges that both La République du Cameroun and the Southern Cameroons have a right to lay claim to sovereignty. Can it be more clear? Can it be more clear? He makes clear, if the 1964 declaration by the Organization of African Unity, to which the president of La République du Cameroun signed, is still in place, and of course it is still in place, freezing boundaries at independence, then it emerges that because the Southern Cameroons has its international boundaries, La République du Cameroun has its international boundaries, both territories have a right to self-determination, have a right to assert sovereignty. It can't be more clearer. And he goes ahead to state that at no time, as at the time La République du Cameroun or the French territory, known as La République du Cameroun, achieved independence, was the Southern Cameroons part of its territory. Let's follow again.
Du Cameroun. A solution would be a close-knit federation made up of two entities and thus ensuring no parting of the ways. The question of the legitimacy of territorial integrity superseding that of self-determination would not be relevant in this instance.
So I don't want to stop here because the most important part I wanted to come to, we have got to it. And he makes clear, okay, for him, his proposal is let the two parties get into a federation and let each part, really each part, have its autonomy. That's just a close-knit federation. That's his proposal. But he makes the case, first of all, clear. We have a right to self-determination, just like La République du Cameroun. So the next proposal as to whether we should stay with La République du Cameroun in the federation, that is for us as a people to determine. Because you must understand here that the argument put forth by citizens of La République du Cameroun like Maurice Kamto and others, claiming that we simply did not even exist under international law, is what is being debunked here. It's what is being deconstructed here. Maybe we follow him again when he talks about those boundaries.
An international boundary separating French Cameroun from the Southern Cameroons existed, affirmed in the Anglo-French Boundary Treaty of 1916 and confirmed in 1931. And if that be the case, would it not follow that the territory of the Southern Cameroonians be recognized sitting alongside that of French Cameroun? An integral part of a peace formula lies with France, my lords.
So you see, he makes clear, because both parties have internationally recognized boundaries. First, reached in 1916, and then reaffirmed in 1931. And don't forget that because of the Bakassi crisis, these boundaries were again demarcated. I mean, again demarcated in the early 2000s. Again demarcated. Maurice Kamto, who is talking here, did not go to the International Court of Justice claiming that Bakassi was the territory of La République du Cameroun. They would never have won. He went to the International Court of Justice claiming that Bakassi was a territory of the Southern Cameroons. Take note, because these are the double standards of these persons. And because of that, the International Court of Justice simply had to kick Nigeria out of the Bakassi Peninsula, because the Bakassi Peninsula is Southern Cameroonian territory, not territory of La République du Cameroun. When you listen to these things, they should help elucidate things in our minds. They should help clarify a lot of things to us. That's why I said that this is an international response to the elucubrations of Kamto Maurice, to his unfortunate attempt at sophistry, at manipulation, as misleading the public's opinion.
Given the David and Goliath nature of the situation in Cameroon, I asked the Minister on what occasions has the British Prime Minister or Foreign Secretary brought this up as a matter with the French President or the Quai d'Orsay. On the multilateral front, we should not forget that Cameroon is a Commonwealth member.
Anyway, I want to end here because what part interested me in this discourse, I've already raised it, and I know this video is out there. Everyone must have seen it. Watch it now more carefully, listen more attentively. Don't just get excited that someone in the British Parliament is talking about the situation in the Southern Cameroons. Pay very keen attention to the things that he is saying, because you see, those things help disculpate the falsehood being promoted by La République du Cameroun and some parrots in our midst, like the John Gutes, the Tanga Ponjis, the Elvis Ngolengoles, and others who kept shouting that there was no Southern Cameroon's problem and all of those things. So this is very important. This is fundamental. This is our history. This is who we are. We are a separate entity from La République du Cameroun. We have always been. It is therefore our singular duty to kick La République du Cameroun out of our territory and restore the soul and sovereignty of our land. Now, that said, let me take this reaction too from Professor Emmanuel Tatamentang. Professor Emmanuel Tatamentang says on April 21, 1961, of course it comes back to that date, the United Nations had 3 votes on Southern Cameroons. 3 votes is another perspective to it. 3 votes. And again, it takes us to that very issue that I raised a while ago, that April 21, 1961 is an extremely important date in the history of the Southern Cameroons. So on April 21, 1961, the UN had 3 votes on the Southern Cameroons. The first was to terminate the UN trusteeship. That was a unanimous vote. To terminate the UN trusteeship, of course, getting ready to grant us independence. The second vote was for the independence of the Southern Cameroons. 64 nations voted against 23. And the 23 that voted against independence for the Southern Cameroons included La République du Cameroun. Know your enemy from the start, including France, and including all French-speaking African countries with the exception of Mali. And the third vote was for independence by joining. France and La République du Cameroun again voted against this. Listen, voted even against this. So the UN designated October 1st as the Day of Independence for Southern Cameroons. Note that the UN always reminds La République du Cameroun of 2 entities. The borders were reinforced in 1919. And on May 20th, the president of the UN General Assembly presented Biya with 2 framed maps as a reminder. Of course, that's Ali Triki, who was sent to La République du Cameroun with the 2 maps to the president of La République du Cameroun. They were celebrating the 50th anniversary of their independence. And it says the Green Tree Agreement is another. It says the AU Constitutive Act 4B. Of course, that the British deputy mentioned, the AU Constitutive Act. That's the OAU that became the AU's Constitutive Act 4B. It's another. Hence, La République du Cameroun is fighting an intractable resource war in the Southern Cameroons. Of course, Professor Emmanuel Tatamenta is simply reaffirming the issues that are raised here. So it says, La République du Cameroun cannot respect the Banjul judgment won by Scapo. And of course, we know why they can't. Because anything that they have to see to face an international instrument means they have to withdraw from our territory. I've said so several times. Let us never be drunken by fire. Some people say, if La République Cameroun gives us a federation, give a country giving to another country what? Give? You see, at this point, sometimes I'm forced to scream. Give. God forbid bad things. So it says the Bakassi ICJ judgment said Bakassi belongs to Southern Cameroons, not La République du Cameroun. So the lies of whatever and all of those things. So in fact, so like I said, and he is reiterating that it was on May 20, that was 2010, where Yaounde reported the offer of the two maps to Bia by Ali Triki, who was the personal representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations organizations, the UNO. So folks, that was the package I had today. But before I go, note, in the minutes ahead, you will be listening to those who have time, who pay attention to the gibberish that will be coming from Mr. Paul Biya. He will be telling you that their war in the Southern Cameroons has literally concluded. He will be telling you that normalcy has returned because they are sending somebody called Bendeka to Kumba, to Cape Town, at midday on this 1st of January to go and do tea time with Okalia Bilai Bernard to claim that normalcy has returned. And so just some pockets of resistance exist that will soon be wiped out and they'll maintain their stay on their land. We must use the very first months of this new year 2024 to send Paul Biya a strong message that they will not stand. And let me tell you, La République du Cameroun has a lot of economic woes of their own in 2024. One, the energy crisis in La République du Cameroun is going to become more horrible. Trust me, if you were having power cuts 2 times, 3 times a day, it will become about 6, 7 times. Sometimes even go for days. I fear it may even get 2 weeks without energy in La République du Cameroun. Oh yes, that is the effect of their ongoing genocidal campaign in the Southern Cameroons. The prices of petroleum products will increase again. There is no magic. There is no way it will not happen. Listen, until you start buying 1 liter of super at 1,000 CFA francs, La République du Cameroun will not stop increasing. They are cash-strapped. The situation is so bad. They will come and paint a flowery situation to you to try and fool you to think that, no, we are holding it from the stronger end, and we must continue to hold very tight to it until we get there. Folks, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time to be on this show, to watch this show with me. So once more, I wish each and every one of us here a happy and prosperous New Year 2024, and I pray that in 2024 we shall move closest to attaining our goal, that of self-determination, that of absolute independence, kicking La République du Cameroun out of our land. If you had backslided from this struggle, please hurriedly jump back to the fold because your wind is leaking. We need all our resources pulled together so that we're able to kick La République du Cameroun out of our territory. That said, relax on this day with moderation, and especially don't go out there to put yourself in harm's way. For those of you in Kumba, stay at home. Don't fall into the deadly bloody trap being set with the Bendekas and the Okalia Bilais and I don't know, the Sparkles and the Who. Don't go out there. So let us all get ready to face the new year with greater determination. Long live the Southern Cameroons, long live Ambazonia, and most especially, short live the struggle. To God be the glory.